Hi, I am back for my next week at Hotel Kansas City. So excited to start my third painting. This one is called A Familiar Storm, and basically it's about watching a storm roll in from my porch in the literal sense, but it's about a storm that comes through when you're least expecting it. You think the sky is clear, and then all of a sudden it just comes out of nowhere. And so this one's going to be pretty gloomy, but have a lot of motion and, stormy. It's really, really lovely in here today at the hotel. We've had some really big snow in Kansas City. We had a blizzard, getting 12 inches, 19 inches of drift in some areas. And so I'm sure the lovely guests here were snowed in, which was probably very, very comfy. And all the Christmas decorations are gone, but now it's just looking really beautiful in here, just as much as it did with the big tree. I've got my blank canvas here, and it's a little bit smaller than I usually work with for this particular, scene or piece. Another really exciting thing is that the proof of my poetry book arrived, and I am so thrilled. Here's what it looks like. So I'm going to change the cover a little bit, keeping the cover color the same, but you obviously can't really see the title too well, so that's unfortunate. But the poetry book is about 100 pages, and it has the same themes as my paintings do. So it goes from healing to listening to premonitions I had, and basically I connect my paintings with the poems in this book, and they're both titled Flying in the Dark. They'll both come out when the collection launches in February, and they'll be for sale alongside the paintings for sale here in the lobby. So I'm so thrilled. I'm making edits, and those will be ready. The final copies come early February. Don't forget to sign up for my email list, because my email subscribers will get first dibs and early access to the paintings in the collection as well, with the ability to pre-order them. So stay tuned for more. I'm excited to start my third painting here at the hotel. Okay, so I just got started on my next piece, A Familiar Storm, and I wanted to give you a little tutorial about how I am using acrylic to make it look a bit like watercolor. My goal is to make it very fluid, looking watery, storm-like, like wind, rain, and just a stormy sky. And I'm doing that with a strategy that I love to use, where it looks like watercolor, but it's actually acrylic on canvas. So I'm going to show you a little bit how I am making this happen. Okay, I'm going to see how still I can keep the camera while I show you. So I'm going to keep adding paint down here in this really dark, stormy area. What I do is I wet my brush a little bit and get it on the canvas in a really fluid way, but only just a little bit of paint. So I'm using an orange and a red, and I kind of grab at them together. And then I go on the canvas with the two paints together, and I'm going to go right up against what I just painted. So I'm going to kind of drag it in here, and because acrylic, unfortunately, I prefer painting with oil for this reason, but because I'm here in the hotel, it smells too much, and it takes too long to dry, so I'm working with acrylic. But because it dries so fast, I'm going to have to go in over this last part so that I can connect them together. So I keep pulling the brush, and then what I do is I dry my brush like all the way, and then I go back and I start pulling, dry again, pulling it through, dry again. Sometimes you have to wet your brush and get all of the paint off. And you kind of keep going at it like this. So if you are working with acrylics, you have to work in tiny sections until you hit your whole canvas. Unlike oil, you can't really work with the whole canvas at one time. Thank you, Chris. My food is ready. Okay, so yeah, again, you have to work in small sections. Otherwise, for example, this part's already dried, so I'm gonna have to go back into it and pull in more color on the edges so I can get that watery fluid mark that I'm looking for. Let me show you here. And this is when you can really get more motion in acrylic painting, because again, I'm mimicking watercolor in a way. Watercolor has such a nice way of creating motion, and that's because water is involved. You can make it much more opaque when you use watercolor. So acrylic is a bit different. Usually you're slapping on paint and it's harder to get that motion. So you just do that same kind of technique like watercolor by bringing in water, drying your brush, bringing in more water, drying your brush, and then you go back in to any areas that are showing lines, and you can kind of pull that brush stroke over it with another layer. Another technique I like to use is, like right here, I'm seeing some lines because, again, let's say you either need to run to the bathroom or go grab something, and because I'm working with such thin layers here, it's going to dry even more fast, and that you'll get things like this. That's a dried layer already. So another thing I like to do if I'm still trying to get that motion is I'll pull in a lighter color like this, like a cream or a light pink or whatever is in the palette that you're working with, and then I'll take that right on top of this layer that's already dried. And I may have to do this a few times, but this is going to create that same motion, like it'll create that same opaque strategy like when you use water and you're showing through to the canvas to kind of get that opaque style. Do the same thing with this. If you use a lighter color on top, and as long as you're doing light, thin layers like this, you can do layers and you won't get, like thick paint edges. Again, it's gonna look more like watercolor, but the cool thing is, since I'm not working on paper, I'm working on a cotton canvas, it won't get pilling on the paper, if that makes sense. You can kind of add as many of these thin light layers as you want. So see, again, there's another harsh line because that's where I left off before I went to put my food in at the bar. And so I'm gonna do kind of the same thing. I'm pulling in water, drying my brush, and then to connect these layers here, I'm gonna go in with another dark color because it'll just be an easier transition. And I may need to wait till this layer's dried a little bit, just kind of, we'll see how it goes, but you see how it's kind of fading into what I just made? I'm using like colors and I'm pulling them in. And then I'm wetting my brush, drying my brush, and we're just going to fade it into what's already existing and create that watery look. Again, if you want to create more of an opaque element here, I just put some lighter color, lighter shade on my brush, and I'm going to pull that in right here. So if you're trying to fade colors in together without any harsh lines and create more movement, that's the way to go. You'll connect two areas with like colors, and then you go in with light colors to create that motion and movement. I hope that makes sense. See how that heavy line that I had before is starting to fade because I'm connecting these two areas. Sometimes you'll want to add more water than other times, but you don't want so much where it's dripping down the edge like right now. So I'll have to work quickly here to kind of fade that in. And this is creating lines right here because I've got too much water on my brush, so I'm drying my brush out. And then you fade it in together. You see how I eliminated that line that was right here, kind of cutting it off, and I added more motion. You can still kind of see the line right here, so I can just kind of keep going. What you don't want is right here, that edge. That'll stay like that if I walk away for maybe 1 minute because the paint's so thin, the layer's so thin. So you want to make sure when you work in these small sections so that all of them can fade down. This will probably be the next section I hit. See all these rough lines? Those will disappear when I do this strategy. And as I keep going, hitting these hard edges that dry with the techniques that I'm showing you. Just like that, fading them together. That's going to create more motion, and ultimately it will be like these other areas using lighter colors with that watercolor appearance. So no harsh lines in this painting allowed, because again, I'm trying to create the appearance of a familiar storm, the name of my piece. You know, where it's windy, and I've got some areas here I'm going to add more where it's a little bit of blue, a little bit green, kind of like if you live in the Midwest like me, when you get a tornado warning or tornado watch, which I live in the city. I live in Kansas City. I don't think we've actually had a tornado touchdown here, maybe ever, or maybe over 60 years. I think my mom said she saw a funnel cloud when she was young. But we get these warnings all the time, and when a tornado is coming, maybe to a rural area nearby, it still gets kind of scary in the city, and the sky starts to get green, a little bit red, a little bit orange. Plus, sometimes I just think of, when I think of summer and summer storms in my head, probably most people are thinking the color's blue, but I'm thinking more of like red and orange. It's like the sun at dusk when you get those summer storms where the sun's setting, but just the sky is orangey and green So that's kind of what I'm trying to give off here. See how I had too much water on my brush, so it created that mark right there. Where'd it go? So I'm drying my brush, and I'm gonna go in more to fade that in. All right, well, I will show more behind the scenes, but just wanted to show you how I'm working on this one and just how peaceful the lobby is right now. Getting ready to head in there and eat my lunch that I ordered. Super excited. It's very peaceful though. Most people aren't checking in for another couple of hours at 3 or so. So I'm just enjoying my morning here. Here's where I'm set up, right by the check-in desk. And it's awesome because I get to kind of connect with guests who come and check in. All right, more to